Muskie spotted a familiar face outside the agency when he returned that night. Yukiri-chan. Oh, Toji. Damn, even better.
あれ、どうかしたんですか？
まあ報告だな。時坂でもよかったのだが、お前の方が深く関係していることだからな。
自分に？あ、とにかく中へどうぞ。
Muskie led Toji into the agency, still curious about what tidings she brought.
今お茶を入れます。
Muskie mantled the desk chair with his jacket before filling the kettle with water and heating it. However, it'd take time for the water to boil. Muskie knew it would be rude to keep Toji waiting that long. Thus, he decided to get the ball rolling.
何についての話ですか？
Muskie turned around and addressed Toji.
いくつかあるが、まずは簡単な方から話すか。ひながみ製薬のことだ。
Now, that was indeed a matter Muskie, or rather, the man once known as Ayata Hinagami, had been at the heart of.
ひながみ家は会社の経営から手を引き、再建へ向けて動き出しているそうだ。元社長のひながみしずるは違法知見に関する罪を認め起訴されている。
あまり興味ありません。
He'd already been disinherited after all.
自分の父親だろう。
Toji furrowed her brow.
まあそうなんですが、今さら自分が何かできるわけでもありませんから。
Besides, it wasn't like father and son had anything left to discuss.
まあいい。次はひながみカレンか。こちらも殺人罪で起訴された。
Nice.
そうですか。
Now that piece of news stung, despite everything. After all, though he by no stretch of the imagination reciprocated. Oh, he by no stretch of the imagination reciprocated. Okay. So he's saying that he does not. If I'm reading this. Okay, I think I'm reading the sentence correctly. He's saying his feelings for his sister is nowhere near the same as her feelings for him. Okay, I think that's how that's supposed to be read. I was like, wait, Ayato, what are you telling me right now, bud? Don't tell me after everything we went through in the last game, you're just gonna be like, yeah, but man, if I would have the chance, man, I probably would have gone for it. Like, bro. Masuki felt, after all, though he by no stretch of the imagination reciprocated Karen's feelings, Masuki felt directly responsible for what had happened. In his mind, his sister probably wouldn't have gone off the deep end had he managed to keep his head under the radar. That is true, isn't it? That is true, isn't it? Yeah, because the nurse was the first one. And that's because she got spotted getting too close to Muskie, yeah? Yeah. Because Muskie popped up on the radar, yeah. All of a sudden, the kettle started steaming.
続きは向こうで話そう。
Toji headed for the sofas. Muskie turned off the stove, poured some tea into a cup, and served it to his guest.
さて、次は黒谷直りか。
Toji went on with her spiel once she'd taken a sip of tea.
何か手がかりが出たんですか？
ひながみ製薬の名簿を取り寄せて、黒谷直りと接触があった人物はいないか調べたが、
それはいないと考えてもいいのでしょうかね。
さあな。結果、警察の捜査も暗礁に乗り上げたような状況らしい。
捜査してくれている警察の人たちは直接会っているわけではないでしょうから。
Toji and Muskie were about the only ones on his trail who had, in all likelihood,
もっとわかりやすい特徴、もしくは顔写真でもあればいいのだがな。
写真？
Muskie got up and headed for the desk, then rifled through his jacket's breast
これなん
pocket.
てどうですか？
似顔絵か。
以前書いてもらったんです。とてもよく似ていますし、自分もこれで聞き込みをしていました。
専門家に依頼したのか。
Toji's gaze shifted to Muskie after studying the sketch for a minute.
いえ、それは久保井千恵さんに書いてもらったんで。
久保井？確か画商の笹倉を殺害した学生だったな。
もちろん事件を起こす前でしたが、こちらの大まかな説明だけで会ったこともない人物を正確に描写しました。
もしかしたら本職の似顔絵描きを上回るかもしれんな。
Toji nodded to herself.
これを雑誌などに掲載すれば目撃情報が増えるんじゃありませんか？
雑誌か。
Toji closed her eyes in contemplation.
いや、 やめておいた方がいいだろうな。
なぜですか？
不特定多数の目に触れるということは、
Yep, and then he would go even deeper into
逃
hiding.
亡している黒谷直里本人も目にするだろう。
そうなりますか？
Oh, absolutely. Personally, Masuki wasn't convinced Naori would heighten his guard all over again after being on the lam for a month and a half now. However, he could understand where Taji was coming from.
捜査関係者に移しを回して聞き込みに利用することはありだと思う。
そうしてみます。
Masuki nodded, despite dreading having to speak with Yaginuma one-on-one. I was reading a book in my living room right before noon when suddenly I saved my place with a bookmark and went up to answer the call.
はい、もしもし。
Kyoko?
京子。
It wasn't every day she called, that was for sure. Hell, we hadn't even spoken since that night.
何かあったのか。
何かあったというわけじゃないけど、ね、今日が何の日か覚えてる？
It's March 11th.
今日。
Check the calendar on the wall. March 11th? Oh, shit.
ひょっとして、ゆかりの誕生日か。
はあ、やっぱり忘れてたのね。
Kyoko heaved the mother of all sighs.
ああ、いや、ゆかりのやつが何も言わないからな。
My sister didn't remind me it was her birthday.
そんなの言うはずないでしょ。
Not of your own sister, idiot. Yeah, this was completely my
後
fault.
でお店に来られる？
渡すんだったら別に俺が行かなく。
あのね、時坂くんが渡さないと意味がないのよ。どうせプレゼントとかも考えられないでしょ。
Am I really such an open book?
わかったよ。それじゃあ、夕方くらいには行くわ。
ええ、よろしくね。
I sighed after hanging up. Damn, that was awkward. Yeah, I thought I'd put all those feelings behind me after that night. Masuki took the tram over to Sakura Ramon. He had Chie's sketch of Naori with him in his bag. I hope this will help with the search.
失礼します。
Masuki entered CID Section 1 and looked for Yaginuma. However, the man wasn't at his desk, but Uozumi's there.
すみません。八木沼管理官はどこにいらっしゃいますか？
Nowhere else to go, Masuki turned to a nearby investigator.
会議だと思うが、
The investigator in question cocked his head when he spun around and saw Masuki.
おめえ、確かレイジンとかの。
まさきです。
魚住だ。レイジの使いか。
いえ、そういうわけではないのです。
Indeed, he'd actually come here entirely of his own volition for once.
まあ、座れや。
Ozumi pulled out the chair next to him and offered it to
失
Masuki.
礼します。
で、何の用だ？
それが
Masuki fumbled over his words when he tried talking about Naori. Exactly how much does this man know about everything that happened 2 months ago? Thought of explaining his connection to all of it was a tiring prospect, not to mention how it could potentially give Ozumi the wrong ideas about him.
お前さんが前の事件に関わってたってのは報告書を読んで知っている。
え
Masuki produced the sketch of Naori from his bag and showed it to Ozumi.
こいつは？
え、現在逃亡中の黒谷直里です。とてもよくできた似顔絵なので、捜査に役立ててもらいたいと思います。
おお。確かお前さん絵の仕事をしてた。
いえ、それは
For a moment, Masuki wondered if he should even say the
さ
rest.
っきの事件の被疑者で、今は海外に逃亡している久保井さんに以前描いてもらったものです。
久保一恵か。絵の才能を買われていたって話だが、
Ozumi made an impressed sound.
管理官には俺が話を通しておく。各地の交番に回しておけば検挙の可能性もぐっと上がるだろうな。
よろしくお願いします。
Masuki bowed.
お、噂をすればなんとやらだ。
Ozumi suddenly glanced behind Masuki. Masuki craned his head to find Yaginuma strolling their way.
八木沼さん、
なんだ貴様か。何をしに来た？
Yaginuma was trailed by what appeared to be a subordinate who was carrying his things, indicating he really had been in a meeting.
管理官、
Ozumi handed Yaginuma the sketch. Yaginuma regarded it for a moment before passing it off the man behind
あ
him.
の、
どうした？
その絵、
お前に言われるまでもない。魚住、打ち合わせだ。部外者には帰ってもらえ。
は
Ozumi glanced at Masaki.
では自分はこれで失礼します。
Masaki was all too glad to oblige, not wanting to deal with the headache of overstaying his welcome and invoking Yaginuma's wrath.
一雨来そうだな。
Made that forecast as soon as I stepped into Moon World.
あら、だったら外の看板は閉まった方がいいかもしれないわね。
Kyoko stopped drying plates on the counter after hearing that.
いや、俺がやっておくよ。
そう？悪いわね。
Went back out, folded the sign by the entrance, and brought it inside as promised.
ありがとう。
何気にするな。
ええ、ただいま。
Took a seat at the counter as Kyoko started brewing my coffee. Okay, I think I'm acting normal. For now. Though Kyoko seemed to be doing a better job of it, if you asked me.
何？
Kyoko looked up from the coffee.
いや、なんでもねえよ。
なんでもないはずないでしょうに。
Kyoko grinned. Could have sworn I got a twinge of gloom on her visage for a moment there. It was probably just my mind playing tricks on me.
はい、どうぞ。
Kyoko served me a cup.
あ、
Felt like it had been ages since my last visit here, even though it was only a few days ago.
ごめんなさいね。
Kyoko hung her head, indicating she'd caught on to my discomfort.
お前が謝ることじゃないさ。
It was all my fault for dragging on our relationship without attempting to make anything of it.
何も変わらないはずなのにな。
ええ、お友達であることは変わらないもの。
She was right. Thus, we just had to keep following the same routines that had worked for us for the past few decades.
忘れないうちに。はい、これ。
Kyoko placed a small package on the counter.
きちんと自分で選んだってゆかりちゃんに言うのよ。
いやー、さすがにあいつのことだから気づくと思うぞ。
If anything, she probably wanted to check me into a hospital to find out what terminal illness had driven me to do something so audacious as get her a birthday present for once.
中身はなんだ？
I was going to try to sell her on the idea I'd bought this. I at least need to know what she had in store for me.
開けてみてのお楽しみと言いたいところだけど、蝶のブローチよ。
そりゃどうも。
Much as I hate to admit it, she was right on the money with her read of my
いくら
character.
だった？
Took out my wallet.
いいわよ、そのくらい。
俺が買ったということにさせたいんだろ
それもそうね。じゃあ、はい。
Kyoko showed me the
う。
receipt.
はいよ。釣りはいいや。ツケの分に回してくれ。
I handed some bills off to Kyoko.
全然足りないけどね。
She
ところ
giggled.
で魚住のおやつは
Kyoko froze for a moment when I asked her that question.
いきなり警視庁に泊まり込みだそうよ。お部屋を見繕ってくれって頼まれちゃった。
That wasn't what I'd been getting
二
at.
人で住める部屋を見つけてやればいいじゃねえか。
そういうのはせめて向こうから言ってくれないと。
Yeah, that tracks.
結局何もなしか。
ないわよ。あ、おかわりいる？
あ
Picked up my saucer and cup, then handed them off to Kyoko.
魚住くんはああいう人だもの。気長に待つわ。
そうか。
Took a sip of my coffee.
だから時坂くんは何もしないでね。
Crossed my
約
heart.
束。
わかってるさ。
Almost said cross my fingers, but that was definitely the wrong phrase. I nodded as I grimaced from the scalding hot cup of Joe. Yukari was cooking dinner in the kitchen, as per usual. It was already dark out, raindrops battering the windows in full force. Hey, should be back any minute now. Should I heat the bath for him? Yukari lowered the heat on the stove, washed her hands, and headed for the bathroom. Though the tub warmed fast because they had a gas heater, it would still take some time for the bath itself to fill. Thus, she twisted the tap, turned on the boiler, and returned to the kitchen. Steam would heat the bathroom as well if she kept it running for a bit. Once she was back in the kitchen, Yukari turned on the stove. After removing a simmering pot, she set a frying pan on the stove next and sprinkled it with oil. That settled, she took some salted slices of salmon, threw them into the heated frying pan. She then fried them carefully while draining the oil that seeped into the pan so it wouldn't burn. It was right when the salmon was browning that she heard the front door open.
ただいま。
おかえりなさいませ。
Yukari poked her out of the kitchen to find her brother soaked from head to
ほ
toe.
ら、寒かったのではありませんか？
Yukari Yukari turned off the stove and brought Reiji a towel.
みぞれ混じりの雨になってたからな。そう遅くないうちに雪になるかもしれん。
もうすぐお風呂が沸きますから夕飯の前にどうぞ。
ああ、そうする。
Yukari watched Reiji dry his hair as he entered the bathroom, then fetched him a change of clothes. Once done with that, she finally got back to cooking. Unfortunately, the fried salmon had stuck to the bottom of the frying pan, even though she'd been careful to turn off the stove before she left. Yukari shook her head before using the spatula to flip the salmon, taking care not to accidentally split it apart. Yukari served Reiji dinner once he got out of the bath. Last but not least, she topped off his bowl with rice and handed it to him.
いただきます。
はい。
Yukari picked a slightly burnt piece of slice of salmon off her plate and took a bite.
やっぱり雪になってるな。
Yukari glanced out the window to find that there was indeed snowflakes belting the house like white lily petals in a gale.
後で火鉢の炭を起こしておきますね。
ああ、頼むわ。そろそろ電気ストーブを買った方がいいかな。
電気ストーブですか。
Having a portable heater would indeed make life a whole lot easier, as well as chores in the kitchen more bearable. However, Yukari was worried that putting one in her room would harm the insects hibernating in her closet.
ですがもう3月ですし、次の冬に備えればよろしいのではありませんか。
すぐ暖かくなってくれりゃいいんだけどな。
Reiji faced the window once again.
ああ、そうだ。ゆかり。
はい。
Yukari cocked her head, taken aback by the sudden call to attention.
今日誕生日だったろ。だから、ほら、おめでとう。
Reiji handed her a small package with a smile. Yukari was less delighted and more surprised that Reiji had actually remembered her
あ
birthday.
りがとうございます。開けてみてもよろしいですか。
も
う。No. Do not open. Yukari tore open the wrapping when she got her brother's permission.
これは蝶。
Within was what appeared to be a cloisonné. Alright. French, making me Google shit. Cloisonné? What is a cloisonné? Cloisonné is the technique of creating designs on metal vessels with colored glass paste. With colored glass paste placed within enclosures made of copper or bronze wires, which have been bent or hammered into the desired pattern. Cloisonné is an ancient technique for decorating metalwork objects with colored material held in place or separated by metal strips of wire, normally of gold. Okay. Alright, here's the Google showing me some cloisonné butterfly magnets. I assume that's close to what she's got. Oh. Okay. No, I see what you're getting at. I'm seeing what you're putting down. This gives me an idea of what it looks like then. Okay, it's pretty. Cloisonné. I didn't see a guide on how to pronounce it, but it's French, which means you don't actually pronounce half the letters in it. Oh, right. Click back to it again.
まあ、そういうのを身につけていてもおかしくない年頃だろ。
I see, yeah. So who bought this? However, she couldn't wear it with her uniform, nor would it look good on her kimonos. As such, she could feel in her bones that Reiji hadn't actually bought this.
誕生日プレゼントでしたら、電気ストーブでもよかったんですよ。
And so she decided to have some fun at his expense.
いや、それだと俺が使えないだろう。
貸して差し上げるくらいはしますが、ともあれ、ありがとうございます。
Regardless of who'd actually picked it out, it didn't change that her brother was the one who'd given it to her.
いや、何？普段世話になってるんだから、そのくらい気にするな。
そうですね。
I need to thank Kyoko the next time I see her. I love how she can just see right through it. That's great. Snow. Special cutscene. MPD. Uozumi. March 11th, 11:52 p.m. MPD. Okay.
ったく。
Jesus
So-
fucking Christ, it's loud. Uzumi stood by a black crown parked in front of the MPD as he cursed his superior, Yaginuma, for issuing orders at the worst time possible. They're moving Rokshiki at midnight. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but damn. In the middle of a snowstorm? Oh my god. Not only was it the dead of night, but it had also been snowing since sundown, two factors that conspired to craft a bitter cold that cut right through the paper-thin coat the force had provided him. Uzumi popped a cigarette between his lips and lit it. Though he'd been instructed to be ready to act at the drop of a hat, he'd never imagined that time would come so late in the night of a shitty weather. However, he also knew that was a testament to how badly his bosses wanted to keep this mission covert. Suddenly, his superior, Superintendent Yaginuma, marched out of the entrance of the MPD. All the officers on standby stood at attention and saluted. Uzumi followed suit, despite his great displeasure and reluctance, stubbing out his cigarette in the process.
今回の概要は分かっているな。魚住警部補。
Uzumi still wasn't used to his new title.
書類に目は通しました。ようやく装置ですか。
There was a murder had been kept in one of the MPD's holding cells for nearly 2 years now. Uzumi was intrinsically linked to said murderer, but in all honesty, he couldn't have cared less about him. He'd already fulfilled his duty to arrest the man long ago, after all. Thus, Uzumi didn't give a shit what happened to him outside his purview.
当初の予定通り、貴様は護衛者の指揮を取れ。緊急の際は無線を使用すること。
了解。
では、よろしく頼む。
Yaginuma went back into the MPD. He'd probably gone to fetch the prisoner and escort him to the transport vehicle in the parking lot. Uzumi's assignment was to protect that car. Said car would be driving between other police vehicles in case something went awry. The MPD had done everything in their power to keep the date of the transfer under as heavy wraps as possible.
こんな時に雪なんざ。まるで桜田門外の変な
Yeah,
起
see,
こり
that's
そう
the,
だな。
that's the thing I kind of suspected too. Like, I understand using a snowstorm as cover, right? Because, like, if someone's plotting something, they're less likely to plot it out in the middle of a snowstorm like this. Because if someone's gonna lie in wait to try to jump out at them, it's incredibly cold and miserable outside, right? So they're not gonna be able to wait for long before they start getting frostbite or some shit. But also, like, this, high security transport and the roads are a mess. Like, that's also a big risk. But the weather boded ill. It was almost like a divine omen signaling something would strike as soon as they stepped out of the safety of Sakura Damon. Uzumi climbed to the passenger seat of one of the escort vehicles. There, he turned on the light and procured a piece of paper he'd only received and pocketed minutes earlier. It was the plan for the transfer, outlining everyone's assignments. There were to be 2 escort vehicles with 2 officers each. Meanwhile, the transport vehicle would be occupied by Superintendent Yaginuma, the prisoner, and 2 officers. The prisoner was under tight restraints in the event that he attempted to mount an escape. Uzumi barely knew his partner on this mission, a consequence of having been away from Tokyo for quite some time. All I could tell was that the man was probably a snot-nosed kid, given his status as a mere beat cop. That said, Uzumi was familiar with the ones riding in the transport vehicle. They were young, tough, and rugged. Suddenly the driver's door opened, revealing Uzumi's partner for the mission.
魚住警部補、よろしくお願いします。あ、
Uzumi focused all his attention on the parking lot, barely acknowledging his partner as the latter climbed in. He could hardly see a thing through all the snow. I've got to make sure this guy sticks to him like glue. None of the escorts had been provided with information on their route. As such, while Uzumi knew their ultimate destination was probably the prison in Kosuke, he had no idea what streets they'd be taking.
出立する。
Suddenly, Yaginuma's voice played over the radio. A pair of lights shone to life in the parking lot.
1号車、先行しろ。
Uzumi grabbed his radio mic and issued orders to the other vehicle. The taillights in the car in front glowed red before slowly advancing in compliance. The transport vehicle passed by shortly thereafter. It was a Crown, just like Uzumi's car. You could see Yaginuma in a mop of white hair, whiter than the last time Uzumi had seen the man. It could only belong to Makoto Rokshiki in the back seats.
こちらも出るぞ。
Uzumi tapped his partner's shoulder. The car roared to life and slowly took off after them. The convoy headed north down Ushibori Street. Bro, imagine, alright? Imagine, right? They bring back Uozumi back into the store. Like, hey, he's back at the MPD. He and Reiji, they're gonna be linking up for the rest of this mission, right? Like, Kyoko completely calls off her little, situationship with Reiji. Decides she's gonna wait for Uozumi to finally make the first move. And then Uozumi gets murked. Now, I don't want that to happen. But imagine. imagine how much of a big fuck you that would be, right? Because honestly, at this point, like, there's still a lot of, questions up in the air. There's still a lot of mysteries we still need answers to. There's still some loose ends, right? But it feels like something's definitely going to go wrong with this transport. In some capacity, something's going to go wrong. And I feel like for the most part, things have been a bit too normal. Not necessarily happy, but things have been too normal, right? But I feel like with Uozumi coming back, he seems to be, get along well enough with the Aginuma. He met Masaki. They seem to be, interacting well with each other. Reiji link back up. They have their, usual banter back and forth. It's nice. They're a couple of bros. It's all great. Reiji even writes in his notebook, I know Uozumi will always have my back. He gets a bit closer to Kyoko. She decides to, make sure that everyone knows she only has eyes for him, and she's gonna wait for him to make that move. He's looking for an apartment around the area. I feel like if there's any death right now that's going to hit hard, and that seems very likely to happen, it's Uozumi. And it's like Uozumi even said, he's like, I don't know this guy I'm riding with from a hole in the ground. Imagine the guy he's riding with is the rat, right? One of the rats on the force. Not only that, imagine he's some kind of, Roshiki sympathizer, right? Yeah, I could see it. That's the thing. Uozumi's the car in back. Right? He's the car in back. Like, sure, I'm sure Yaginuma will notice if, like, all of a sudden the headlights behind him aren't there anymore, or they start to, like, drift off. He'll be like, wait, what happened to Unit 2 back there? But also, it's very possible Yaginuma is so locked in, like, he's stuck in a car with Rokshiki of all people, right? So he's locked in and he's following the unit ahead of him, right? It's very possible he might not notice. It's very possible. I doubt it. Yaginuma's the type who would notice, but still. I don't know. Like, I hope and pray Uozumi can come out of this and get a good ending, right? Because he got shafted at the end of the first game, wasn't around at all in the second game, and then he comes back to us in the third game like, nah, this time I'm back, boys, just to then get off. Like, bruh, I want Uozumi to get a dub. I really do. Like I said, with everything with Kyoko being set up, he's got this new promotion and whatnot. Things are going good for him. And that's exactly why I worry. Because when things are going great for someone, especially in a story like this, especially when we're not at the end of the story, that's the perfect time for tragedy to strike. Due to the snow, no other cars were out and about. Fortunately, that meant it'd be a piece of cake to spot any suspicious vehicles. Driver turned onto Shinjuku Street as per Yaginuma's directions. Wait a second. Shouldn't Kozugebi straight ahead instead? So what's the plan then? Get on Meiji Street at Shinjuku? If that's the case, that would mean they were headed to Sugamo Prison. Still going by that moniker, despite administration passing back into Japanese hands years earlier instead. Why? Because it's Makuro Rokshiki we got here? If Uozumi was right, then the route they were taking was surprisingly conventional. Perhaps top brass had determined there'd be a less risk of attack going down frequently traveled wide roads rather than narrow alleyways or something.
2号車後方異常なし
Uozumi radioed in with an update as they passed above Yotsuya Station. Convoy passed over Sotabori Street and headed towards Shinjuku. Uozumi could see tram tracks gleaming with sleet and snow running parallel to them.
車滑らすんじゃねえぞ
Uozumi warned his partner.
了解でありま
Driver nodded as he kept a firm grip on the column shift. It would have been hilarious if they ended up rear-ending the transport vehicle at a time like this.
笑い物で済みはいいけどななんでもね前見て運転
Makoto Oroshiki was a vicious serial killer who had been arrested nearly 2 years ago. His claim to fame was a series of gruesome murders he committed against pregnant women back in 1950. He'd been held in custody at the MPD ever since his arrest, the workings of his mind a mystery to all. But whatever he was hatching in his brain, absolutely no one would put it past him to attempt a stunt today, of all days. The convoy approached Naito Shinjuku. The driver did as Yaginuma asked, passing Isetan shortly thereafter. So far, so good. It was a straight shot to Ikebukuro from here. The convoy cruised by the remnants of the training grounds in Toyama. There weren't all that many buildings around, despite the area being part of the Yamate Line's inner loop. Streetlights were in short supply in the vicinity as well. This is pretty much what I would have picked for an escort route as well. Of course, this also meant that they were tipping Oroshiki off their ultimate destination was Sugamo instead. Yozumi kept a close eye on his surroundings with that thought in mind. The snow pelted the windows like mad. As such, the red of the transport vehicle's taillights grew blurrier and blurrier. Fortunately, though, there weren't any cars around. Assuming they were concealed under the cover of snow and darkness anyway.
各社警戒
Yozumi issued an order through the radio. His car was rattling like they were in the midst of an earthquake, thanks in part to the poor state of the road.
後方2号車
Yaginuma hastily issued another order. Seemed the poor visibility was bringing them too close to the transport vehicle.
2号車了解
Yozumi would rather not have ended this with them causing a fender bender. Moments later, the distance between them and the transport vehicle grew. Much to Yozumi's relief, no cars were around to seize the opportunity to zoom in. The convoy crossed the Kondo River, also known as the Edo River to some, and ended up in Toshima. Suddenly, the transport vehicle's taillights glowed red just as Gakushun University on the left and the overpass on Meijiro Street up ahead started coming into view.
止まれ
Yozumi tapped the driver on the shoulder again. Fortunately, they had been going fast enough to crash into the car. Why the hell did they
こ
stop?
ちら2号車状況
そのまま待機せよ
Yaginuma responded not too long after. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to Ozumi, but that didn't matter.
1号車周囲の警戒を怠るな
Ozumi couldn't see the lead escort vehicle from the back of the convoy. The transport vehicle didn't move either.
1号車
Yaginuma's voice blared over the radio once again. Something ain't right here. Ozumi cracked open his car door a smidgen. Cold rush of air flooded into the heated car. Ozumi cursed that the only thing he'd issued upon his return yesterday was his police badge.
おい銃は所持してるか
No other options, he quickly turned to the driver.
貸せしかしつべこべ言ってねえでとっとと出しやがれお
Ozumi's partner pulled the handbrake and started untying the gun from his belt. Suddenly, one of the transport vehicle's doors opened.
よこせ
Ozumi snatched the revolver out of his partner's hand and exited the car. A police officer emerged from the transport vehicle just then.
どうした
Ozumi raised the firing hammer at the figure despite the lack of any hostile intent or action on their part.
それが被疑者が拳銃を管理官に突きつけてなんだと
Ozumi's gaze shifted over to the transport vehicle. However, he couldn't tell what was going on inside through the back window.
高速はどうしたわかりませんいつの間にか
Shit.
1号車は先に行ってしまっています周囲の警戒をしていろ
The fact that Oroshiki had chosen to take action here now meant there were probably sympathizers lurking nearby. Don't know how he got word to him, but I wouldn't put nothing past this bastard. Ozumi leaned back into his car and seized the radio.
ヤギ沼応答しろ
However, there was no answer. Unfortunately, Yaginuma was the only one with the authority to inform HQ that something had gone wrong. The rest of the cars didn't even have a direct line to them. Suddenly, the transport vehicle's lights turned off. Then that car just proceeded
こちら
forward.
も明かりを消せ
Ozumi got back into the car and issued his order to the driver. The transport vehicle was fading further into the white darkness with each passing
しっ
second.
かり前を見て追えよ
明かりは消さないでもらえますか
Suddenly, a spine-tingling voice traveled through the radio.
六式
It was none other than the man they were meant to be transporting. Oh, was it?
明かりは消さないでもらえますか
No, it was. I guess I just assumed it was Yaginuma without paying too close attention, because like the radio effect put on it. Yeah, no, that's Oroshiki, huh?
動かないでください私も無駄な殺人は犯したくないので
ライトをつけろ
Driver did as he was told. However, the transport vehicle was now gone. Ozumi leaped outside once
お
again.
前は中に入ってろ
Ozumi urged over to the officer who had been kicked out of the transport vehicle. The Meijiro Street overpass was right before them. However, Meiji Street turned left up ahead, blocking their view of any other cars.
車をゆっくり進めろ
Ozumi tapped on the driver's window, hurriedly issuing orders. Silver lining was that if they couldn't see Oroshiki, then Oroshiki couldn't see them either. Not necessarily. The escort vehicle passed beneath the overpass. Then all of a sudden, the air howled with a gunshot. Shit, that was close by. Ozumi was about to charge like a bull when he noticed tire tracks turning left on the road. They went down a service road, then inclined toward Meijiro Street. Ozumi dashed up the hill, kicking snow aside all the way. Meijiro Street turned out to be just as barren and carpeted and white as the rest of the streets. Tire tracks continued due west, leading directly to some sort of dark lump collapsed in a heap. Damn.
おいヤギ沼
Damn. So that's how Yaginuma goes out, huh? That's fucked. That doesn't mean Ozzy's safe, though. Ozmi raced over to his superior and lifted him in his arms. A moment later, Ozmi realized the street was dyed in models of red.
何があった？
逃げられました。すぐに。
なことは分かってるん。
Unfortunately, though, he had no way of contacting HQ. Furthermore, he had to get Yaginuma to a hospital, and fast. Just then, a pair of headlights approached them from the west. It was a transport vehicle that had supposedly taken off.
おい！
Ozmi stopped the driver and snatched the car's radio.
電車、千歳橋上、目白通りに集まれ。柳沼警視が被疑者によって撃たれた模様。
Ozmi switched channels once she'd finished getting the word out to the rest of the detail.
本部、応答願います。護送中被疑者が逃走。柳沼警視が。
Two cars approached from Meiji Street just then.
警視を車の中に入れろ。もう一台はこの先の目白署へ行って応援を呼んでこい。
Once he was sure everyone knew their assignments, Ozmi grabbed the driver of the transport vehicle by his lapels.
何があった？
それが被疑者が拳銃を柳沼警視に突きつけて車を降りまして、自分はしばらくこの道を走り続けろと。
Did you listen to him? Much as Ozmi wanted to slug the driver, this wasn't the time for that. Instead, he let the man go and went back to where he'd found Yaginuma. A trail of footsteps at the scene led in the direction of Gakushin University. However, the college's campus was expansive and covered with trees. Getting through the woods would situate one near Meijiro Station and Takadana Baba Station. Did Orochiki know that? Is that why he made his getaway here? However, he shouldn't have been able to predict the snowfall. All we've got to do now is follow his tracks. Sets of flashing red lights approached from the west. There were squad cars and an
柳
ambulance.
沼警視を搬送しろ。残りの連中は周囲の捜索。学習院にも許可を取って敷地内をくまなく調べるように。
That said, Ozmi had no idea if they'd even be able to get permission so late at night.
たく。
Ozmi pounded the roof of the car. Yaginuma would likely take the heat for Orochiki's escape. Ozmi didn't mind that part. He was still vexed beyond belief that Orochiki had slipped through their fingers. Damn, alright, alright. Interesting development. Oh god. My beauty sleep was ruined by the peal of the phone. Ugh. Yukari should still be around to get it for me.
もしもし、時坂です。あ、お久しぶりです。
Okay.
わかりました。少々お待ちください。
I'm very interested to see how everything comes together. I'm very interested to see how this all comes together. Because now there's so many loose ends right now, right? And like this is the final entry in the series, right? So like things are supposed to come to a close, but there's so many loose ends right now, right? It's like Chie is over in Italy. But there's still like the identity, so everything concerning her. But then there's the identity of the first woman who got remodeled, right? There's everything concerning the paintings. There's the loose end from the second game with Naori being on the lam now, who has Reiji's daughter. There's now this loose end, a new loose end added to the story with Rokshiki being on the lam, escaping police custody. How does everything come together? That's like, I have faith that they can bring it together, right? I have faith that the writers can bring it together. I'm not saying that because there's all these loose ends at this point that that's a bad thing. No. I'm just very curious how we bring everything together. Very curious. I'm just trying to think about how things could possibly be connected. I don't know. Because as far as I know, Naori has no connection to Orochiki. And then, as far as I know, Sei doesn't have any connection to either of them either. They're three individual, like... It's like all three of our main antagonists are, like, on the run right now. Well, no, Sei's not on the run, but, like... There's loose ends connected to, like, all three of our big antagonists across all the fucking games. Like our big bad from the first game, oh, he's an issue again. Our big bad from the second game, well, I mean, technically I wouldn't call Naori the big bad of that one. It was more so like right at the end. It was like, oh yeah, I think Karen and those murders were more like the main set of it all, but like Naori was kind of like the hidden bad guy, right? When we didn't really, well, I kind of expected, but that's not the point. One of the main antagonists, essentially, who was like hiding in plain sight. All of a sudden, he's still a lead we have to focus on. And then now, essentially, who I assume to be our main antagonist of the third game with Sei, because apparently she's done so much with the remodeling, the kidnapping, right? She's definitely the big bad behind the string of murders for sure. And there's still questions concerning her. It's like everything's, there's a lot of things still open. It's just how everything's going to come together. It's just weighing on my mind, and I wonder. Shit. So much for that beauty sleep. I reluctantly sat up in my futon.
おはようございます兄さん。魚住さんからお電話ですよ。
ああ、
What could he want? Knowing him, he was probably calling to inform me he'd finally secured a place of his own.
もしもし、俺だが。
Whatever irritation I had at being rudely separated from my slumber was blown away by the grim undertone in Wozumi's voice.
何があった
I urged him on despite knowing I wasn't going to like whatever he had to say.
六式。おい、まさか。
I nearly slammed the phone against the wall for a moment. However, I regained my composure just in the nick of time.
焼き沼の容体は
Okay, okay. Yaginuma's not dead. Good to know, good to know.
井戸橋か。わかった。
おいレイジ、こいつはこちらの問題だ。メンツにも関わることだからな。
だったら最初から俺に連絡してくるんじゃねえよ。
伝えてやらねえとてめえは勝手に動いちまうだろうが。
今は勝手に動くつもりはねえよ。
I wasn't obsessed with Rokushiki as I'd been years ago. Then it changed just how dangerous his own personal obsession was out in the wild. As such, the sooner he was back behind bars, the better.
そうだな。見舞いの花は菊でいいよな。
やめておいてやれ。
I took the train to Idabashi and arrived at the police hospital, just a stone's throw away from the station. Wozumi was waiting for me out front.
お前も大変だな。戻って早々にこんな事件に巻き込まれてよ。
まったくだ。俺も現場にいたから朝まで状況の説明に追われていた。
Wozumi grumbled.
まだ見つかっていないのか。
見つかっていたらこんなところにはいねえよ。
Unfortunately, he could be anywhere if he'd already been on the loose for that long. I doubt news had broken to the public either.
近隣の駅には始発前から警官を張り込ませているが。
警察が考えることは奴なら当然予測済みだろうさ。
I'd learned painfully well over my career in this city that trying to find a fugitive in Tokyo was like trying to find a specific tree in a forest. Yeah, no shit.
立ち話もなんだ。中に入るぞ。
Wozumi abruptly put our talk on hold and strolled into the hospital.
よう、ご愁傷様だったな。
見舞いに来た第一声がそれですか。
Yaginuma glared at me from his bed with a scowl.
別に見舞いに来たわけじゃねえよ。
外部の人間に話すことではありませんが、聴取もあるのでしょうし。
よろしく。
Wozumi took a seat and whipped out his notebook.
まずは車内で何があったか
車内では6式を後部座席の中央、僕ともう一人の警官で両脇を挟んでいました。明治通りを進み、目白通りの陸橋をくぐる前でした。停車後、無線で他車に動かぬよう指示を出せと言われました。もう一人の警官に外へ出るよう指示し、
Yaginuma recited that information so stoically that one would never have imagined he was the one this had all happened to.
それは全て6式の指示か。
ええ。目白通りに上がってすぐ、6式は車を止めさせました。僕を人質に取ったまま、その直後。
Yaginuma rubbed his abdomen.
これで 僕の出世の道も閉ざされてしまいましたね。
Aonuma chuckled like a man who realized there was nothing he could do to stop his impending demise.
捕まえればいいだけだろ。
そうもいきませんよ。足の引っ張り合いなんて日常茶飯事ですからね。
Yeah, sorry, but I don't have time for your bitching.
それで、六式は何か言っていなかったか？
I was more than happy to jump on whatever clues he may have left, no matter how insignificant they seemed.
逃亡先に関するようなことは何も。ただ、僕が撃たれた時、無駄な殺しはしたくない。
He did say that, which then makes sense why I'm guessing he knew where he was shooting Yaginuma. Like he may not. Well, that's the thing. Rokshiki studied. We know he studied several areas of what the fuck's the word I'm looking for? Healthcare, maybe? Because I'm pretty sure he was the son of like a doctor too. He studied psychiatry. He studied something else. He studied various areas of like health sciences, from what I remember. So I'm sure he would be knowledgeable to learn like what would be a good spot to shoot someone that would be, for the most part, non-lethal, as non-lethal as possible, right? I mean, a gunshot anywhere has potential to be lethal, right? But what would have the lowest chances?
無駄な殺しか。まるで無駄ではない殺しがあるようじゃねえか。
Uzumi frowned.
奴の頭の中ではそうなんだろうさ。事実、奴が直接手を下しているのは特定の条件を満たしたものだけだ。
That was to say, pregnant women or women who've gotten abortions. For in his world, abortion was the greatest sin of them all. It didn't matter to him if those women actually went through with it or not. Simply even considering the notion for a second merited a death sentence in his mind.
しかし、奴はどうやって拘束を解いたんだ？
I look back at Yaginuma.
わからない。気づいたら腕の拘束が解かれ。
Yaginuma gritted his teeth.
縄抜けの技術でもあったのか？
手品の縄抜けには仕込みが必要だろう。それにしても
弁解のしようもありません。外部からの襲撃にずっと備えていましたから。
雪も降っていたから視界が悪かった。審判が動けないと見て自力で脱走したということか。
The MPD may have tried to keep information about Oroshiki's transfer under lock and key. That didn't mean crap now that he'd escaped.
つけられるとしたらここ数日が山だろうな。
I knew that all too well from my experiences with fugitives, such as the other one I was currently hunting.
んなことはお前に言われるまでもねえよ。
Ozumi turned around.
聞けることは聞いた。あとは足を使うだけだ。
それもそうだな。
I didn't know if we'd be able to track Oroshiki down, but I wanted to gather whatever clues we could.
そうだ、ヤギ沼。六式が脱走した理由なんかに心当たりはないか？
見当もつきませんね。
Yaginuma just shrugged as best he could. Whatever it is, must be pretty important to him. The bastard wouldn't make a break for it just because he didn't want to go to jail. He's up to something, I'm sure of it.